The Big Bang Theory divided the nerd population of their audiences. On the one hand, we appreciated the countless references to comics, sci-fi, and fantasy media. But on the other hand, the frequent allusions to stereotypes about nerds being awkward, friendless virgins quickly got old. Nevertheless, despite how you might personally feel about the show, you have to acknowledge the effort put into exploring one of the biggest joys of a nerd hobby, collecting comic books. Here are the best quotes about comics that the show has provided us with over the years. Hero? Shish. You can't ask a question like that in here. You trying to start a rumble? Stuart the comic store owner's hilarious response to who's the best superhero perfectly encapsulates possibly the core of the entire superhero comic book community's chief concern, their favorite hero being stronger than every other. Sure, Batman may be an ordinary human, but if he has enough fans backing him up, he will absolutely beat Superman in a story. There are entire fan forums dedicated to endless online arguments about which superhero is better than another, which usually boils down to who would win a fight. And despite there only being one true answer, the fight is won by whoever the writer of the comic decides will win. The pointless debate has been raging ever since the birth of comic books, and will likely continue forever. 9. Smell that? That's the smell of new comic books. Takes a deep breath. Oh, yes. Somehow, comic books have never been classified as literature, even though that is what they are, just with more drawings. But reading a new comic book gives fans the same pleasure as reading a new book. And one of those chief pleasures is taking in the scent of the new pages still trapped within after opening a comic book for the first time. It is a scent that brings back fond memories of countless childhood hours spent poring over the latest issue of The Amazing Spider-Man or Man of Steel. 8. It's a comic book convention. Like pizza or particle accelerators, even the stinky ones, still pretty good. Comic conventions are not everyone's cup of tea. They are usually crowded, loud, and with one or two booths that you actually want to visit in between wandering aimlessly around. But despite their shortcomings, these conventions are the place where you get to meet the people responsible for your favorite comic or video game, and for that reason alone, conventions will always hold an appeal for that section of the fandom which wants a deeper connection to the full body of work that. 7. Which is why no one else will ask him to sign one, and I will be the possessor of a unique albeit confusing artifact which will set me apart from the hoi polloi of comic book fandom. This quote draws attention to the lines that exist within fandoms, with serious collectors striving endlessly to find a way to set their own collection apart from others. Even if it means something as confusing as Sheldon's strategy to have Stan Lee sign a copy of Batman, a character he had nothing to do with, just to own a unique piece of signed memorabilia. 6. What happens in costume at Comic-Con stays at Comic-Con. Once again, we are back at Comic-Con, and talking about one of its most fun aspects, dressing up as your favorite fictional character. This is different from dressing up for a party or Halloween, where your costume gets a cursory glance at best. At Comic-Con, every inch of your costume is examined in critical detail by other fans, so you better bring your A game. You are also actively encouraged to stay in character, not just in costume, which can be a liberating experience as you find yourself behaving in a way you never normally would, and having all sorts of interactions and adventures, good and bad, that will not follow you back to your regular life. 5. I'll tell you where I've been. You boys may have had gelato with Stan Lee and gotten autographed comics, but I saw the inside of his house and got an autographed application for a restraining order. There are a few constants that feature in every story involving nerds, and reverence towards Stan Lee is one of them. Sheldon and the rest of the gang are naturally huge fans of the comic book legend, with his appearance at the local comic store a huge event that they looked forward to with bated breath. Unfortunately, Penny caused Sheldon to miss the meet and greet, and to make up for it, Penny took him to Lee's house. Sheldon, being Sheldon, managed to mess up the meeting and cause Stan Lee to get a restraining order against him, which Sheldon proudly displayed at his house. 4. It's amazing people keep coming to comic book stores instead of just downloading comics digitally. Print media is going digital, and comic books are no exception. Many major comic stores all over the world have had to shut down as a result, and this is an issue that has gone into pretty deeply on the show. Stuart struggles long and hard to keep his shop open in the face of dwindling sales until he is finally forced to close down. The story does end on a hopeful note, as Stuart gets to reopen his store. 3. I was thinking of closing early and going home, but let's face it, that's just a slightly smaller lonely room filled with comics. Stewart regularly competes with Raj for the title of saddest character on the show, and this was one of the lines that allowed him to edge out a victory. There are not a lot of good things in Stewart's life. Comics are not just a way for him to eke out a living, but also to find an escape from his poor living conditions and lack of friends. In fact, comic books as a means of escaping an unpleasant reality is a recurring theme on the show. 2. I think you mean comic books. Comics are feeble attempts at humor featuring talking babies and anthropomorphizing pets found traditionally in the optimistically named funny pages. 1a. Comic books are storytelling through the use of sequential art, a medium that has existed for 17,000 years back to the cave art of Lascaux, and b. You play the harp, like that's cool. Leave it to Sheldon to not only read comic books but to also have studied their history all the way back to the Stone Age. It shows his devotion to the art of the sequential images telling a whole story, which goes far deeper than his usual endless arguments with his fellow nerds about some obscure trivia relating to superheroes and their mythologies.